heaven.
Hello and welcome to Who Is Best, a show where I, Loclete, put off doing a Final Fantasy IV list for years because A, I'm scared of the fans, B, it's one of my least favorite Final Fantasies next to 2 and 8, and did I mention I'm scared of the fans? In all seriousness though, I work very hard on these lists and want to make sure that I represent the game and its community as accurately and thoroughly as possible. Unless it's a Tales game where apparently I just throw darts at the wall. You don't have to subscribe. Final Fantasy IV should be recognized, above all else, as one of the most influential RPGs in history. Not only did it create an epic grand tale with characters that actually have personalities, but it also created the ATB system, which yes, may be out of date now, but was an impressive advancement in the day. Now I don't think the game holds up as well as many claim it does, but it's still a game in one of the greatest RPG series, so let's get into it. To begin, a tier list of this game is complicated. There have been multiple ports, versions, and even remakes since its release in 1991. Each of these reiterations tampered with the formula slightly, and so a universal list is kind of ridiculous. Which is exactly why I made one.
NANI?
Yes, my friends, I have done the research, and I believe that with a little bit of understanding that there will be some minor exceptions and a little Moogle dust, that we have the definitive tier list for Final Fantasy IV. So let's get into it by starting with the tier. First up is the Spoony Bard Edward. Not at all a surprise. Edward has been lauded as one of the worst party members in the series, and with good reason. In most versions, you can't take him to the end game, and in the ones that you can, he requires such outrageous grinding to even get him competing with the top tier. Overall, you have a squishy, mostly useless support mage that is in and out pretty quick. The second and final member of the tier is Cid. Not only is Cid incredibly slow, but he also struggles with survivability since his weapons are usually two-handed and cut him off from using shields. Magic spells will almost certainly wipe him off the map. His weapon is useful against mechanical enemies, but during the short section of the game he's usable, you will see very few if any. Overall, no matter which version you're playing, Edward and Cid are pretty useless. The low tier. Fusoya, I'm sure I said that wrong, is one of the most powerful mages in the game. You only acquire him for a short time, but he is a very welcome addition during that time. If he had a higher mana pool, I think he might have crawled up higher on this list, but unfortunately he's gone as soon as you get him and drains you of your ethers. Tellah and Fusoya function pretty much the same, though the sections of the game where you can use Tellah are made so much easier because he's there. His situational usefulness here is very welcome, as his powerful magic is only hindered by low MP, and not to mention some low HP as well. The final member of the low tier is Porom. Porom is the white mage sister of Palom, and unfortunately just doesn't serve a purpose beyond spamming Cure. Her cry ability is practically broken in the DS and GBA versions, but even that won't save her here. I think the other issue here is that during the section of the game where she is available, you really just don't need much healing. If you took her into the endgame, you'd find that every boss destroyed her within seconds. So at the end of the day, she landed on the low tier. The mid tier. First up on the mid tier is the Dark Knight Cecil. This is the form of the protagonist throughout the first half of the game and is pretty useful. He trivializes the early game with incredible weapons, AoE attacks, and high strength, but as soon as you approach the mid-game, he takes a complete nosedive. This was obviously on purpose, but reaching the Mount of Ordeals and facing off against undead opponents pretty much solidifies this guy in the mid-tier. Palom, during his short stint in your party, is incredibly versatile and useful. He ranks up there with Rydia as far as magic damage goes, and he even has some decent survivability, at least compared to his sister. When taking the endgame, if you're playing that version, he starts to lose steam as many enemies can counter his black magic, and he doesn't have the summon ability like Rydia. The final member of the mid-tier is Young Rydia. I have to pause here to recognize just how cool the character transformations in this game are. I mean, you have two characters that literally transform. Not to mention that Rydia's design is just top-notch. Anyway, when you first get Rydia, she has both white and black magic and ends up being one of the more consistent party members. The top tier. First on the top tier, and one of the endgame team members in any version, is Kain. Kain is simply a DPS machine. His jump ability, if timed right, can be highly effective, and even if not timed right, you can always accidentally live through a team wipe and toss Phoenix Downs like your life depended on it. Sure, he lacks the versatility of Edge or Cecil, but having the second highest normal damage in the game isn't too shabby. Next is Yang. Yang isn't an in-game teammate in most versions, but even so, he is an incredible physical damager with elemental claws that, with a bit of planning, can hand out incredible amounts of damage. He's the ultimate tank, able to survive almost any attack, and has respectable speed on top of that. Next on the top tier is another endgame party member, Adult Rydia. Rydia is one of your highest damage dealers with both black magic and summons to bring variation. Summons specifically become highly effective in the endgame as enemies can't counter them. I would have put Rydia in the God tier if it wasn't for the fact that you will be constantly reviving her. Rydia is one of the squishiest endgame characters with record low defense and HP. But if you can manage to keep her alive, she will be dishing out incredible damage. The final member of the top tier, and possibly the most controversial, is Edge. Similar to Rydia, the only thing going against Edge is his survivability. A soft breeze would take this guy down. But again, if you can keep him alive, his speed and strength, along with the boss-destroying throw ability, absolutely rockets this guy up to the top tier. Not to mention that he got a severe boost in the DS version, making him a little more tanky. The God tier. First on the God tier, and one of the most important party members in the game, is Rosa. Rosa is your endgame healer with a halfway decent physical attack. With the right equipment management, her elemental arrows can do some mid-tier damage. The main reason that she's on the God tier is her support and debuff spells. Final Fantasy IV places an emphasis on status buff and ailments, and nothing is more critical than the slow spell, which might as well be required for most boss fights. On top of all this, she's one of the most consistent party members in availability, solidifying her at the top. And the final member of the God tier and top of this list is Paladin Cecil. Not only is he a complete physical and magical tank, but he has high physical attack with elemental swords that can do heavy damage to enemies, and has support spells like Cover that make many of the squishy party members viable. From the moment you get him to the endgame, Paladin Cecil is a must-have for any endgame party. And that's my universal list of Final Fantasy IV. Let me know if there's an appetite for the sequel game, The After Years. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you all later.